Sounds good. So again, my name is Daryl Olson, and I am the Director of Programming at the American Indian Community Housing Organization, or AICHO for short. It's a lot easier to say. And so AICHO is a nonprofit agency that works to turn oppression into opportunity. We are located in downtown Duluth. You'll notice a big mural on the side of our building. And our mission is to honor the resiliency of Indigenous people by strengthening communities and centering our Indigenous values in all the aspects of our work. So I'm really grateful to be able to present to you guys today and tell you a little bit more about AICHO and the work that we've been doing. The summary that was sent for today is really about creating greater community during COVID-19 and what AICHO has done both within our current programming and expansion during the pandemic. So AICHO runs a 29-unit permanent supportive housing program in downtown Duluth. It's housing for individuals and families that are coming out of long-term homelessness. And we operate upon the housing first model, which is basically as it sounds. In order to meet individuals' needs, whether it's chemical dependency, mental health barriers, education, financial literacy, you have to meet their basic needs first, and housing is one of those. We operate with 24-hour front desk security staff. It's a secure building. You have to be buzzed in at any given time, and any visitors that come to the building have to check in at the front desk. We don't allow visitors to go up to any units unless they're escorted directly by the tenant that they are visiting, and that's for security and safety of all of our participants. We work with a tremendous amount of survivors of violence through our program, so security and safety is one of our biggest things. Through these 29 units, we operate on a variety of different subsidies. We have some Section 8 subsidies, we have some HUD subsidies, and then we also partner with the Fond du Lac tribe, and they provide subsidies for housing for 5 of the units that we have. Within Gamaji, we also provide on-site support services. And some of those support services include case management. So we have 2 full-time case managers on staff at all times to support participants and their children. We also partner with White Earth Mental Health, and they provide therapeutic services for all of our participants through a direct referral that our case managers can make. We also have legal advocacy on site through our domestic violence program. And we run children's programming as well as grief and support groups, and then our gardening and food programming. If you have ever been to our building, so we have 2 gardens. We have one on our rooftop with a solar panel, and then we have one that's newly created, which is in the, it's on the back side of the building in the alley. And so that's our lower urban garden. All of the gardening program and activities are actually run and put on by our youth in Gamaji. And we started off with a very, very small box from the Horticultural Society back in 2013. And Duluth downtown is a food desert. There's not a lot of healthy options. Grocery stores are not within walking distance. And so we, over the years, have expanded all of our gardening program. And the youth, they take the lead on it. They choose what is planted every year. They tend to it. They do all the harvesting. And then what they also do is they then create products from what is harvested from the garden, and they go to farmers markets and they sell those products to earn income for themselves and to put back into their programming. On top of Gamaji, we run a domestic violence shelter called Dabinoo'igan. And during the pandemic, that shelter was hit pretty hard. We are a very, very small 10-bed shelter, and we had to minimize down to 5 beds only for safety and social distancing. Back in, I believe it was mid-December, we had an outbreak of COVID at our shelter, which prompted us to shut it down. Staff had to quarantine, participants had to quarantine. And so we started working with a hotel in Duluth, and we are using the hotel to house victims of violence and their children so that we can continue to operate our shelter and do it safely during the pandemic. So we're still able to serve and take crisis referrals. And in the meantime, what we are doing is we are trying to develop a 17 to 24 bed shelter to increase our services. And that shelter, the new location will be in the basement of the Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center. And so we have already started renovation down there, and hopefully after the winter and things calm down, we can get contractors in there to finish it. Through our shelter program, we provide also 6 months of ongoing advocacy support for clients once they leave the shelter. And we also provide that support for non-shelter clients, anybody who's been a victim of violence. We have our legal advocate on staff who helps victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, trafficking. Some of the services include protection orders and court advocacy, transporting clients to appointments or any type of court or legal appointments. They can also assist with writing or filing for orders for protection, harassment orders. And what we often see as well is when there are victims of violence, there's also oftentimes open child protection cases. So our legal advocate works very, very closely with St. Louis County Human Services to provide support for our families that are working in child protection cases.
It is.
So the Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center, excuse me. It's our cultural center that we host all of our events in, as well as our talking circles. We've had film premieres, art shows, community trainings, as well as different things like missing and murdered Indigenous women marches, red shawl dances. We've had proclamations there, as well as voting. And that was named after Dr. Robert Paulus, who has been one of the founders in getting Gamaji going and getting us the funding and the support that we needed from Minnesota Housing to build this permanent supportive housing to be able to serve those of our relatives that have been unsheltered. It's really hard doing this presentation and not being able to show you guys these beautiful images of the space, because I think it makes such a difference seeing the space and then having me talk about it. So I had some beautiful pictures of some of the activities that are done in the center. And since the pandemic hit, AICHO has been closed to the public for the safety of all of our participants as well as our staff. We continue to do different talking circles and art shows, but we do everything virtually now. So on our Facebook and our website, we post all the links where folks can still join and be active in all of the culture and art activities, but we're doing it in a little different way. So our rooftop gardens, again, we host events there. It's available for both staff and residents to go up at their leisure, whether that's just to go up and read a book or maybe go pick some sage, or just go up there, take some photos and show their family or relatives the space that they have. We also recently we did like a after school s'mores with the kids, and different activities outside, because we're right downtown off of 2nd Street and there's not a lot of green space. So our rooftop area is one of those key spaces for our youth and our families to use. At Gamaji, or I should say at AICHO, we have a children's program. It's a Healthy Families Initiative, and it increases access and experience and activities. And the goal is to offset health disparities by strengthening our cultural practices and education, and then access for Indigenous food systems and culturally based activities. So we do activities within our gardens. We have a gymnasium. We have, oh, thank you for putting that in the chat as well, our website. And then different cultural activities, we take them on numerous field trips: maple syrup camp, berry picking, fishing, language camp, wild rice harvesting, you name it, and we've done it for our children's program. This year we actually expanded, and typically our children's program was only for youth that were living in AICHO housing programs or the domestic violence shelter. But this past year, we wanted to reach out to our middle school and high school kids, especially with how difficult it has been with the pandemic and their socialization and, being in and out of school. And so we created the Together We Grow program, excuse me. And we work with middle and high school youth doing skill building activities. So there's exposure to indigenous food practices, gardening, farming, entrepreneurial skills. And so the youth got to learn directly from our indigenous food producers. They tended to not only our urban gardens, but other urban gardens in the Duluth area. And then they created value added food, which was all grown by them, and they sold them at our indigenous food markets. We had 6 of them this fall. And they were able to capture all of this experience through photography and video. And right now our youth, as well as our food producers, are working on that, editing that video so that it can be shared with the larger community and showcase all of the work that they did over this 16-week period. Also, AICHO has an Indigenous First gift shop. So we work with over 75 local artists and entrepreneurs showcasing their work in our Indigenous First gift shop. And this is located in our main permanent supportive housing building. However, when the pandemic hit, we mobilized Jasmine Wong, who was our gift shop coordinator. She created an online portal so that folks could purchase items from the gift shop, and they could curbside pick them up because we were closed, or she would ship them. And during the pandemic, it was incredible at how many orders that we were getting from all over the country, all over from Canada and numerous other countries, because folks then had access to all of this artwork online, instead of the only way before was for folks to come in and to see the gift shop and shop in person. AICHO also runs some offsite programming. So we have a building in Lincoln Park. It's called 2301, and it is right off of Superior Street. And this space is being developed into a coffee shop, an art space, and then a community venue, as well as we are going to build additional affordable housing on the upper level of this building out in Lincoln Park. And then we also own a building that's called the Ndaje building, and it stands for A Place Where Stories Begin. And this is a 10-unit building that provides long-term housing for individuals and families that already have a voucher. So housing, we're in a housing crisis, especially here in Duluth, but all over the country. And this building, it doesn't provide support services to families, but a lot of families right now are coming up on that Section 8 housing list, but they can't find places to rent to them. And so this building specifically, we work to reach out to folks that have a voucher already, to subsidize their rent and have more self-sufficiency and independence, and don't need permanent supportive housing and all of the services, but need a roof over their head. And oftentimes, especially in the last couple of years, we've had families that have been really, really successful at Gamaji, which is our permanent supportive housing program. And they've gained a lot of independence and self-sufficiency and are ready to move into independent living. And so what we'll do is we'll work with them to transition them from Gamaji into our Ndaje building. So they still have that connection to us as staff and as community, but they're able to live independently on their own without so many direct services. One of the biggest programs that has taken off for AICHO is our COVID-19 emergency food distribution program. We started this program back in October of 2020, and prior to that, we were just providing food support boxes to AICHO participants. And then we were approached by the American Indian Cancer Foundation, as well as Hunger Solutions, and they asked us, would we have the capacity and would we be willing to expand and start providing food support to the larger community? We were right in the crisis of the pandemic starting, and we knew that food was a big issue for folks. Access to food and access to healthy foods, as well as PPE equipment or household items. And so we started doing community food distribution, and we've been running it now since then. Since March of this year, we've spent about $420,000 providing food support to the community, as well as household items and personal protective equipment. The program runs every other week for the community, and it's run out of the Newen Market, which was formerly the 4th Street Market here in Duluth, that AICHO purchased. And so people can pull up curbside and pick up a food bag, as well as fresh produce, frozen items, and then we hand out resources related to the pandemic. So access to vaccine clinics, testing, saliva testing, any resources related to, employment or updates from the Department of Health. Each week we make a new resource guide with the recent news that has come out from the governor's office, as well as the Department of Health or the CDC, so that we can get that information out to the community as quickly as possible. And then in our alternating weeks, we work with a variety of different housing providers who serve our unsheltered relatives who are living on the streets or encampments in Duluth. And we provide, we create food-specific bags for our unsheltered relatives, as well as hygiene kits and things like that. And we do on average 150 to 250 every other week. And then those community partners come to the market and they pick up all those bags, and then they go out and deliver them to the folks that they know that are living in the streets or in the woods or under the bridges, or a variety of different places in Duluth. And so this Newen Market originally was going to be transformed into an Indigenous foods market. And that is still happening, and I get a lot of questions about that. However, until it's safe in this pandemic, and until we have the ability to start developing it, we're going to keep running the emergency food distribution program for the community. And our hope is to continue that to June of 2022. And at that time, then we would start to work on the development and be able to work on the food market, as well as hosting other food events with our Indigenous food producers through that program. I'll just go through, I already spoke a lot about this, but I really think that showing the images really gives you the full perspective of AICHO and the work that we do. So this is our building in downtown Duluth with our water protection mural on here. And this was done by a group of artists called Insurgents. And they were from California and Albuquerque. And they came up to Duluth several years ago and started this mural, and it ended up being a community mural. And so you can see, not very well, but there's a group of folks down below on the mural and scaffolding. And we had probably over 75 different community members, AICHO staff, other artists come and be able to physically paint this mural in different spots of it. So it really was a community collaboration. This is the front side of our Gamaji building that I spoke about, our permanent supportive housing building. And Gamaji Mino Bamadaziman, it stands for We Are All of Us Together Beginning a Good Life. This is a photo of our back urban garden, which is located on the back side in the alley in downtown Duluth. And so this actually was just taken this year, showing how vibrant our garden grows even in the downtown area. This is the blueprint of the shelter that I spoke about. So like I said, we had a 10-bed shelter, and we turn hundreds of women and children away a year who are fleeing violence just because of lack of space and ability to house them because it was so small. So this new shelter, we will have separate units for every family so that there is more privacy and intimacy for them, as well as more open common areas and a commercial kitchen and gathering spaces for them. And like I mentioned, this will be in the basement of the Paulus Center. This is the Dr. Robert Paulus Cultural Center. So outside of here is kind of where we do our hors d'oeuvres and our coffee and things like that when we are able to do in-person events. And then on the right side is the actual auditorium and the event center hall with some of our artwork up. These are just a few of the different art shows that we've done over the years, as well as our Red Shawl Dance to honor missing and murdered Indigenous women each year. These are some more photos of our rooftop garden, and you can see in the one on the upper right-hand side, our solar panel, as well as the mural. And then this is one of our elders and her granddaughter who is harvesting sweetgrass on our rooftop garden. And then you can see the sage right behind her. And that sage was actually gifted to us by my aunt several years ago, and she gave us 4 plants. And since then, we have so much sage, we don't even know what to do with it in both the upper and the lower, and it all came from those 4 little plants that she gifted us. And then there's a mural on the back side of the roof as well, and this was done by the artist Laurel Sanders, as well as the first kids that ever moved into Gamaji in 2012. They painted that mural with her. This is some photos of our children's room. And this is probably my favorite mural of all of the murals in the building. And the reason behind that is this was done by Laurel Sanders, as well as our kiddos that first moved in 2012. And this space was concrete floor, just very, very dark. And Laurel used to come in and she would tell the kids, teach the kids the grandfather teachings, and she would tell them stories every time they painted. And she would talk to them about how paint looks different when it dries and how it transforms, just like the teachings in our grandfather stories. And all the staff at that time were like, we're going to give all these kids paintbrushes and just free range to just paint. You know, it's going to be a mess. And Laurel was like, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And so the kids would work on this. And then every night, Laurel would come back in when all the kids were asleep, and she would touch up all of the little things on the wall, so that the next day when they came down, they saw this transformation of whether it was the flower that they painted or one of the animals or the water. And I tear up when I talk about that story because I've been with AICHO since 2013. So shortly after they opened, and I know youth now who are about to graduate and can come back and they can tell me exactly which petal or which animal or which constellation they helped work on. And, you know, Gamaji really is a community within a community, and we really hold that true, and love seeing our youth come back now that they've gotten older to participate or mentor other youth who are living in our permanent supportive housing program, and to share with them their stories of how this organization and this housing program has transformed or, you know, impacted their life. These are some of our youth at the youth market selling items that they created from what they grew and harvested in the AICHO gardens. And this is some pictures of our Indigenous First gift shop. So like I said, we work with about 75 plus artists, authors, food producers. So this is right in the Gamaji building as well. This is a photo of Jonathan Thunder's Sweetgrass model mural that he painted for us. And this is out on our 2301 Arts Building in Lincoln Park area. And these are just some photos of our emergency food distribution program. This photo I love to share because we received a semi-truck full of food from USDA. And at that time, we didn't realize that they weren't going to have the ability to get all of these pallets off of the truck. And so we ran over to Essentia Health and asked to speak with their maintenance department. And they came right out with their Bobcat and their forklift to help us move thousands of pounds of food to distribute to the community that day. And it was quite amazing to see them quickly respond and see what we were doing and take part in it. It was, I mean, it was an amazing way of seeing community come together. This is the Newen Market. So this is the front side of the market where we're hosting our food distribution programs. And then this is just some images of the food distribution, how we set it up, some of our staff. So we do it outside for safety reasons. And if it's raining or the weather's pretty poor, we put up tents as well outside for our staff. And all of our staff take turns. So it's not just food distribution staff. Every one of our staff take turns going up there and participating, whether it's packing the bags or giving them out to the community or packing people's cars or just, you know, interacting with our community members. And then this is a mural or a painting that Carolyn Sue Olson painted. And it was inspired one day when she walked up and saw the food distribution center and our staff in the community together. This is just a short list of our funding partners who's allowed this food distribution to continue. We are currently still running the program, and we will run it through June of 2022, hopefully. And we are continuing to work with other funding partners or seek donations to continue this food distribution for the community throughout the pandemic. One of the, or a couple of the other programs that I didn't mention, but I do want to mention real quick, is AICHO is also a field partner for Rent Help MN. And so we provide navigation assistance to anybody living in Minnesota who is behind on their rent and they need help to get ahead or to catch up on their utilities. And so we've been working with Minnesota Housing now since Rent Help came out, and we will continue with that funding as long as it's available. I know they are going to extend it at least another 6 months. So even though the timeline originally was when this emergency funding came out was December, we know that it's going to be available at least another 6 months. And then the other piece that I failed to mention is that AICHO partners with the Department of Health as a COVID community coordinator, a CCC. And so we provide support for the community on COVID related issues, whether that's access to vaccinations, saliva testing, resources, education. We do saliva testing on site at AICHO. We host vaccine clinics with public health as well as the state, and try to get the information as quickly as we can out to the community on updates that are coming down and related to the pandemic.
And wish you so much thanks in Miigwech, Daryl, for all of your wisdom and your leadership and just helping us get a window into the amazing work and service that AICHO is providing the Duluth and surrounding community.
Thank you so much for having me.
Miigwech.
Miigwech. Thanks, Daryl.